Hello and welcome back to the Keep Bright On podcast. I'm Alex Dickin and I'm joined by my co-host and colleague Brian Dick to discuss Blues' defeat in the Virtue Trophy final to Peterborough United at Wembley on Sunday afternoon, and a little bit more. I think we're going to try and have a bit of a kind of therapy session and put some perspective on the defeat and the season less than 24 hours on. Brian, how are you bearing up, first and foremost? It was a very, very long day on Sunday.
How am I bearing up? Thanks for my support group. I'm Brian, and I'm terribly disappointed. Yeah, it was an extremely long day, wasn't it? What time did we meet? 7:30, and then we finally parted ways at about 11:15 last night, something like that. So, yeah, it was a long day. Listen. It clearly didn't go the way any of us wanted to. There are reasons for that, which we'll no doubt discuss. But also, I think the highlight of my day, while you were tapping away, speaking to Chris Davis and beavering away, doing the stuff that needed doing, was I spoke to Tom Wagner for the first time, to be fair, in the mixed zone at Wembley, and we got some really good stuff out of him, some really encouraging stuff. So, whilst it was a deflating day, my big takeaway will just be, I had my belief levels topped up just before we left the ground.
That's what we're hanging our podcast and our hope on today, isn't it? I think
it is. Yeah.
And we are going to come on to that a little bit later. Starting with the game itself, didn't really go to plan at all, did it, Brian? So the 2-0 defeat, 2 goals before half time, both absolutely brilliant strikes, to be fair to Harley Mills and Hector Cipriano. Where did it go wrong in your eyes?
It just felt like Blues just had no energy. They didn't ever get into sort of anything above second gear, did they really? And once Peterborough scored and they had something to hold on to, their energy levels are already good, but they became men possessed, and they had. Again, I'll use the word energy. They had sort of all the intensity and the tempo that Blues lacked, and they also, as I said, once they had something to hold on to, they just never looked like relinquishing it. And quite honestly, the scoreline could have been bigger. I felt the scoreline probably, it was fair to the point of maybe just flattering Blues a little bit, I think, because all of Blues' weaknesses. And there are weaknesses in this team, which is a silly thing to say when, they've won League One with 6 games to spare. But there are weaknesses in this team. And I felt all of them were exposed a little bit yesterday.
Myself, without offering any great insightful analysis, I just think a lot of things were against Blues from the start yesterday. I know they had a massive number of fans in terms of outnumbering Peterborough, but the motivation levels for Peterborough must have been extremely high. When you think of what had happened 5 days previous on Peterborough's pitch, Blues celebrate promotion. No team wants to see that, do they really? No. Especially given the season Peterborough have had. As soon as they go 2-0 up, Darren Ferguson's half-time team talk is done, isn't it? Because he says straight away, remember what happened at St Andrews back in September? You blew a 2-goal lead against this team. Don't do it again. So it just felt like everything really fell into place for them in terms of like motivational factors yesterday. And on the pitch, in terms of the tactical setup, it sounds very simple, but I think the big pitch made a huge difference. When you look at the spaces between the Blues lines, particularly between midfield in Tomoki Iwata and Sung Ho Peck and the defence, I just think the gap was so big. And in the first half, Kwame Poku was drifting off that right-hand side, finding loads of space. Cipriano was finding space in there. Mothersill was finding space in there. And they were on the half-turn all the time. And then all of a sudden they're running at the Blues back four. And, that's kind of, for the first goal, that's how Poku won the free kick, isn't it? He turned and, went past Cochrane. And we can debate whether that was a foul or not.
Oh, I don't think there's much debate in it.
Cochrane got a slice of the ball, but I don't think he was going to stop Poku, was he? And then he brought down the man.
No, I think, Cochrane did enough to nudge the ball, but I think he was then on the ground and Poku was still moving at full speed. So I think Poku would have potentially recovered it as well. So no debate for me on that. No. I think the whole week's been exhausting, hasn't it? Really, not only from our point of view, but Blues would have expended a lot of emotional energy, and I'm going to keep using that word, during and after Peterborough, the promotion game, and then they'd have travelled to London on Friday, and then on Saturday they'd have been crowned league champions, and it would have been okay, sort of that's fine. And then the build up, as you said, there was so much expectation that was laid upon them. I just think the whole thing just took a huge amount out of them before they even set foot on the pitch. And yeah, you are right. The pace that Peterborough had and the spaces that they were able to exploit, credit to them, because it looked like Iwata and Pek Shung Ho were trying to put fingers in dikes. It was just springing leaks everywhere, weren't they? Certainly in those exchanges of the first half. So yeah, the game script, the weak script was a difficult one for Blues to manage. Then the game script went against them, and it just ended up being a really poor performance, a really deflating performance.
Yeah, the noticeable difference between the two teams before the match was the speed. We've said that all season about Blues, that they do lack speed, apart from Ethan Laird and Keshi Anderson. But I don't think Keshi Anderson's a real flyer. And Peterborough have, an abundance of speed, don't they, in those attacking forward positions, but also in the fullback areas as well. And that pace, killed Blues, didn't it, really? And especially Jones in the second half, when Blues were kind of obviously trying to, compress the game into Peterborough's defensive third. The spaces were there for Jones, and on a couple of times on the counter, if his touch had been better or the combination play had been better, then they probably would have got in a little bit more. He obviously had that chance where he's kicked into the back of Peck's leg, and he's fell to poker, and he's been denied by Allsop, but probably could have had one or two more with better attacking play in that second half. But yeah.
Yeah, it's not a forgettable game because of the stage it was on, but it was forgettable in the other sense, wasn't it? In that Blues didn't do anything to remind you of what happened. The spectacle was memorable, but the actual way they played wasn't. And it's unfortunate, without singling out individuals, which is exactly what I'm going to do. That some players have probably had their worst games this season. I thought Kieran Dowell, probably had his worst game in a blue shirt. Willem Willemsen again I thought he had an okay first 10-15 minutes, and then one misplaced pass and he seems to go in his shell again. Jay was getting no service at all. You kind of thought that Anderson and Laird had the beating of their men, didn't you? And it was obvious there was no space for the two sort of tens to play. So you then move the ball wide, and then for some reason, when Anderson or Laird did get round their men, in Anderson's case it didn't come in, or in Laird's case it was blocked, or didn't find a teammate. And then you look at the defence, and both Clara and Davis, had their hands full, didn't they, with Ricky J. Jones, and when the wide forwards end up running at them, it just looked really uncomfortable. And Alex Cochrane didn't seem happy with his man, and Laird got caught forward a couple of times with Odo exploiting space down that side. Just bad matchups all over the show, weren't there?
And that has been the great strength of Blues in the second half of the season, hasn't it? The two wide players, obviously Laird's a right back, but playing high and wide, Laird and Keshi Anderson, and obviously the all-stop diagonals that we didn't really see one kind of out to in run, did we, from
No,
Anderson at all? And that's been a feature of Blues play in the second half of the season. We didn't really see a raking long ball from Allsop to find either player. So probably comes down to Peterborough closing those spaces effectively and making sure those players can't make those runs. But yeah, it was a little bit disappointing in the second half, because Laird obviously went off because he wasn't putting the ball in with enough quality, or
I think that can only be it, Alex, because he did look like the one outlet, didn't he?
He did.
And then I think when Jay got moved to the left, you made this point that Anderson came over to the right, and him and Laird not getting in each other's way, but they seem to be trying to play in the same spaces.
Yeah.
And I can only think that because Laird was looking dangerous. You know, he won a couple of free kicks. He was getting outside his man relatively easy, just standing him up and exploding past him. Can only have been taken off because he wasn't getting the ball in, and Gardner Hickman was sent on with the instruction of, you get the ball in space and you whip it into the box. But then you made the point, a really good point, was who to?
Yeah, that's the issue, isn't it? And, you know, Willemson is obviously terrible in the air, but he'd gone off by that point. But he at least does sometimes meet the ball, doesn't he, when it goes into the box? He at least, because he's 6'4", he does sometimes get on the end of it. At that point, TGH was whipping the ball into Alfie May, Kieran Dowell, and, you know, Jay Stansfield had managed to get in from his left wing position, him as well. None of them are any good in the air or great aerial threats, are they? So
Alfie scored two headers in the last week. Let's not forget that.
Yeah, but
he's not a big target. No,
no, he's not jumping above a 6'1" centre back and winning them, is he? So Fernandez and Warlin had it quite comfortable when the balls were coming in from wide areas. The fullbacks tucked in and made it. You know, life was quite easy for Peterborough. I would have liked to see Lukas Djukovic coming a little bit earlier if that was going to be the game plan, and that was, you know, it was inevitably going to be the game plan, wasn't it, for the final 20 minutes as Peterborough sat in. I felt like Djukovic would have offered something more. He'd have given Blues a greater aerial threat in the box.
Yeah.
When he did come on, Blues actually probably looked the most dangerous they had in all of the second half, I felt. And the best chance they had was him.
Yeah, indeed. So, good save by Jed Steer. Djukovic made a good contact from across from, was it TGH's cross?
I think it was TGH, yeah.
Yeah, good contact on the volley. And listen, a yard further away from the goalkeeper, and it potentially goes in. And it was a little bit close to Steer, but it was still a good save. But yeah, absolutely, they just had a focal point. And even when the corners started going in, then there was just a little bit more chaos, wasn't there, in the Peterborough box? So yeah, you're right. As much as his team didn't play well, you know, it probably wasn't Davis's finest hour either.
Just one final point before, you know, we actually do start having a bit of a therapy session, because this feels like it hasn't been that at all so far. Do you think the Wembley experience made a difference? Because Peterborough obviously won the Virtue Trophy last year, didn't they? And a lot of their players had already experienced playing at Wembley in front of a big crowd and playing on what is probably the biggest stage in English football. Whereas we were, you know, tallying up the number of appearances Blues players had made at Wembley beforehand, and it was only Ryan Allsop who played twice for Lincoln and Wickham, and had won both times. Christian Bielik, who obviously didn't make the squad through injury, according to Chris Davis, he had played once for Charlton, and who's the other one? Keshi Anderson had played once for Blackpool. So
yeah,
Blues had only got three players, only two of which were in the match day squad, who had actually played at Wembley previously, whereas Peterborough have got a whole 18-man squad, most of whom have played there. So do you think that made any difference in terms of the way they handled the occasion?
Yeah, I do a bit. I thought, as we said earlier, first and foremost, they looked better suited to the big pitch. I thought the pitch looked sticky to me. The ball didn't seem to be rolling as Blues would have wanted it to. But yeah, Peterborough came in knowing they've already won at Wembley. As you said, Blues came in, most of their players having never played at Wembley, but I go back to what I said before, all the expectation on them. So it was it a free hit for Peterborough? I don't know if a final is ever a free hit, but it did seem that they had the cards, didn't they? Other than the massive playing budget and huge squad.
Yeah. Moving on to the day itself. You know, which to be fair, we must say the day was quite enjoyable before the football started, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
We had a lovely time walking down Wembley Way, or Olympic Way, I like to call it now. We got there, I think, not long after 9, to be fair, because we obviously wanted to set off early and not risk getting delayed and what have you. So the sheer number of Blues fans that walked past the little coffee shop we were in at the bottom of Wembley Way in comparison to Peterborough fans was ridiculous, wasn't it? It felt like 25-1, didn't it, Brian?
It did, yeah. I mean, Blues fans were pouring out at Wembley Park at 9 o'clock, you know, and they carried on pouring out at Wembley Park, you know, right until sort of 2 o'clock, didn't they? And the fan parks were absolutely heaving. It was all very celebratory, wasn't it? You know, amongst the fans, and then you've got Tom Wagner going into the fan park and speaking to supporters. Tom Brady then doing an appearance. we say this now, was it all a bit cart before horse?
I don't know.
Or are they allowed to celebrate the fact that they won League One yesterday? They probably are, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the thing. They had won the league, less than 24 hours before, hadn't they? So you can probably excuse Blues leadership team and whatever fans celebrating a league title, because ultimately that is what we're here for, isn't it? To get back to the championship, and they've done that so easily. Chris Davies was very quick to reference that in his post-match press conference, wasn't he? In that he said that it proved to him kind of how brilliant their league season has been, to only lose 3 games away from home and to win, I think it's 29 games in the league, isn't it? And get promoted with 6 games to spare. So I suppose, that's fair enough. We're always disappointed about the day as a whole. But, beforehand, it was nice. It was very nice to see so many Blues fans enjoying a day like that.
It was very cathartic for a fan base. Yeah. I wrote several times yesterday, a fan base that had been so neglected, not recently to be fair, but, it had a dark decade before Knighthead came in. It was their first trip to Wembley since 2011. So, yeah, it was just good to come together as a community almost, wasn't it? And, the wider community coming together, the very wide community coming together. And there was a lot to celebrate. I'm probably being a bit mealy-mouthed there when I make that point, but there was a very good season to celebrate. And, Tom Wagner is mindful of the fact that this investment, this whole thing Knighthead have got going on with Blues, it's not about the Virtue Trophy, is it? He's speaking to the masses with the thoughts of the stadium, the sports quarter, with the thoughts of the championship and promotion to the Premier League. It's a whole big project. So, he's not going to miss out on a chance to address the wider public in person on a day like yesterday. It was a really good day other than the football. You're absolutely right. And I enjoyed talking to Blues fans, just seeing how positive they were and, how optimistic they are about the future. We've done that in years gone past, and it's been difficult to get anything positive out of a Blues fan, hasn't it? So yeah, it was a really good day, all but the final result and the performance that led to it.
Yeah, to add a little bit of extra flavour of what happened before we went into the stadium at about 12:30. Tom Wagner, Tom Brady, all went on that open top bus in the fan zone, the Blues fan zone. It's packed with Blues fans. Even outside, Blues fans who hadn't quite made it into that fan zone were there watching as Wagner and Brady, started chants of Campiones. To be fair, it did feel rather forced by the announcer, particularly in Brady's case. He clearly wasn't that keen to do it, but he still did it. Fair play, good sport. Wagner's words were quite interesting. Just going to read out a little quote now. For all those people that say we can't fill 60,000 seats, we have an acronym for that, don't we? FEA. We can't repeat the acronym or make out what it is on this podcast for obvious reasons. Most people are probably aware of that by now. But the sheer number of Blues fans, we estimate that, they obviously sold 43,500 tickets because that was their allocation, all they could have because of segregation inside Wembley. But we believe they had a lot of the corporate seats as well. So estimation, at least in excess of 45,000 when all's said and done, because there were a number of fans who clearly just came down to enjoy the day as well. Probably at around 50,000 Blues fans at Wembley yesterday. That in itself is a positive because it shows that already the supporter base is there for when Blues do move to the sports quarter in however many years' time, that it's not just going to be a 60,000 seater stadium that's half full. There's potential, if Blues keep going along and getting better and fans get more interested, that they could have a stadium that is predominantly full, or if not full.
Yeah, indeed. And I made reference at the top of the episode to speaking to Tom Wagner after the game, and this was one of the things that he spoke about. Should we go on to that now?
Yeah,
it's probably a good moment. Yeah. So I asked him, first and foremost, I asked him what was the first thing on the agenda tomorrow, as in today, and he said figure out how to expletive win. And he said we've done a lot of that this season, but we haven't been able to win the match that matters the most. I don't know if it was the match that matters the most.
Biggest occasion.
Yeah. We need to learn to win at a higher level, which is really important. But yeah, just regarding the stadium and the sports quarter, just scrolling down, I asked him, is he hearing the right noises that he needs to hear from the people in the corridors of power? And he said, I think we're hearing the right statements. Now we need the right action. And I just wondered, having the meetings with the local government and the national government and trying to access public funding and get the permissions that they're going to need, the enormous amount of red tape and that they're going to have to go through just to stick a spade in the ground at the wheel site. And he was absolutely unrepentant about, not wanting to put the 5-year time span back. He's absolutely going full throttle, pedal to the floor to get this done. And I was just impressed that he hasn't been worn down by the slow moving wheels of governmental bureaucracy, I guess is what I'm saying there. I mean, he just exuded, there's the word, energy again, and enthusiasm and determination and commitment. So, that was I wish you could have been there, Alex, because I think you probably needed it more than I did, to be fair. Yeah, it was a really, really good interview from him.
We always say the same thing, you're going to get downbeat and then you listen to Tom Wagner speak afterwards and you're ready to run through a brick wall, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. Where's the nearest wall I'll run through?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's clear there's a massive job to be done down in that part of Birmingham. A couple of weeks ago when I was bored on international break, I had a little wander around in Nine. It didn't go particularly how we thought it might, because you can't actually see the wheel site through all the we can only get a little glimpse of it through all the industrial units and things going on down there, the waste sites and stuff, and it needs a lot of work. Wagner did say, his time scale of it was 2029 initially is lunacy. I think they're looking at maybe 2030 now. Probably still feels very ambitious based on what we've seen down there, but once it gets moving, and they do get spades in the ground, then who's to say it can't happen quickly once the red tape's out the way. And that is clear. It has clearly been the biggest issue in the first year. It has pretty much been exactly a year now since they announced their plans to do it. So getting through that's probably going to be the most taxing and time-consuming exercise, isn't it?
And I'll just read a quote because this is important. This is significant. He said, "This is an important project for Birmingham and the West Midlands and arguably for England." And I say that because we can take one of the most deprived areas in all of England and really turn it around economically. So just to reiterate that point, it's not just about another football pitch for Birmingham City to play on. And as you say, you've walked around that area. It really does need investment. And not that anyone in the corridors of power would listen to this podcast or what we say, but they have got a golden opportunity here with a man who's determined to drive something and create something. And I wish the Toms, particularly Tom Wagner, all the best in getting this off the ground, because it's landscape changing for Birmingham, isn't it?
Yeah, we hear about the phrase is always leveling up, isn't it? Level up, and
I don't know if this government uses that phrase, do they?
Do they not? That's been the phrase the last 10 years, hasn't it, or something? Probably.
I'm straying into difficult territory here, but go on.
Yeah, but if you want to help Birmingham level up, then get on board with it. Get on board with it, because it's going to change the landscape of, like you say, Brian, one of the most deprived areas in the city, and it desperately needs it. So hopefully they can do that and get it moving quickly, because it would be it'd be amazing to have that type of thing in Birmingham, wouldn't it? You go to Wembley on Sunday and you kind of see what that is, and it's far more than just a football stadium, isn't it? There's so much around there. There's so much to do. Fans did spend a day there. Many Blues fans stepped off the train at 9 o'clock with suitcases, didn't they? So they're clearly planning to spend, a day or two there. So Why doesn't Birmingham deserve a place like that? It does. It's the second city of the UK. So,
should we move on to the other big point that Wagner spoke about, which is eluding me now? I wish I hadn't started that sentence without knowing where it was going.
Transfers?
It was the documentary, wasn't it?
Documentary.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'm really sorry. I've only got back from Wembley 10 hours ago. It was the documentary, the Amazon documentary. Obviously, Blues fans will be aware of the fact the club made an announcement that there is going to be an Amazon documentary on this season. In the car on the way down, we were talking about it and kind of coming to the conclusion that the fly on the wall sports documentary was a genre that had been pretty much done and had all the life squeezed out of it. Is that where we were with that?
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because the best one is the Sunderland one, isn't it? This is speaking from like a purely neutral point of view. Like you watch the Sunderland one, and I don't think the people who owned Sunderland or ran Sunderland at the time and commissioned that documentary had any intention of it being what it was.
No.
They clearly thought it was going to be a success story. We're going to get promoted back to the Championship. It's going to be fantastic. And, it was anything but, wasn't it? It was an absolute disaster, a car crash from start to finish. It was literally just hilarious. It was hilarious.
Yeah, it was compelling, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what it was. And, those are the ones that work and do really well. Blues is going to be probably a slightly more difficult sell to neutral fans because it has been so plain sailing. There's not been any jeopardy, really, has there? You see a lot of teams come down to League One, big clubs come down to League One and struggle to get out of it. Blues haven't. They've just completely, run away with it. They had challenges at times in Wickham and Wrexham. Wickham in particular did outstandingly well to set the pace initially, but they were never going to be able to maintain it, whereas you always felt Blues were going to be, and they have. And they've pulled so far clear now. They've won the league with 6 games to spare. So it feels like it might be a hard sell to the neutral, but Blues fans are going to love it. We're going to really enjoy watching it. So
people who know with this very small K, some of the personalities involved, it'll be really good to see, what Stansfield and Laird and people like and Bielik are like around the place when the cameras are where we can't get to. It'll be interesting from that point of view. I do wonder, how much of a story arc is there or a narrative here? Because from the outside looking, is we went down to League One, we bought all the best players, and we hammered the league. And
if you love winning, Brian, this is the documentary for you.
Yeah, I guess so. So it will be interesting. But the reason we bring it up, because I asked Wagner about transfers, and the first thing he started talking about, as he was going to, because they're rightfully proud and it is a big thing, a big part of their plan, was this documentary. And he spoke about the revenue that this documentary is going to be bringing into Birmingham City. So that's why I talk about transfers. He talks about revenue, and obviously, people can join the 2 dots for themselves there. But let me see. I have bolded this. He says, with the tailwind of a documentary series and so many global partners we've got a lot more to come on the revenue side. People might say, why do you keep talking about the revenue side of things? But without revenue, we don't get the players. We're focused on making this a commercially viable club. I will not rest until we're the most powerful revenue generating club in the Championship by a wide margin, including those who get parachute payments. So that's why the Amazon documentary is a big thing. Just to explain that, it may not be the rags to riches story or the car that some are, or it may not be the car crash that Sunderland Until I Die turned out to be, but it is an important pillar of getting money into the club to progress things on the pitch.
Yeah, so we mentioned it on a recent podcast, didn't we, about the accounts from last season. And how they improved in the United, going from, I think, around 6 million to almost 13 million in the 23-24 season. So that was before the documentary money will have come onto the books. That's before the Virtue Motors money will have come onto the books. That is most importantly before the Delta money will have come onto the books. And we, can probably estimate that's going to be the most lucrative sponsorship deal of those that Blues have done. Maybe not. The Amazon thing might be worth more, but Delta as a brand and sponsorship deals in the background, you think it probably is going to be the biggest. So their revenue for next season from these commercial deals, or this season, sorry, could be or should be probably bigger than the 13 million of last season, shouldn't it? So like Wagner says, revenue equals players effectively. So you presume that that's going to mean there's going to be more money to spend. And
just to be clear, this documentary series doesn't happen without Tom Brady's association with the club, does it?
No,
do you not think? I think it would be difficult for Tom Wagner to go to the producers at Amazon and say, "Look, we're a football club that's fallen on hard times. We're trying to turn it around." That might sell in the UK, but I don't know that sells to an American audience, which is obviously where they're trying to monetize without the name Tom Brady attached to it.
Yeah, you hang it on him, and they're obviously going to hang it on him for that American audience, aren't they? And tap into his supporter base. You can sit back and say, how big an influence does Tom Brady have at Birmingham City? Clearly has an influence on the medical side, and so does his body coach Alex Guerrero. Wagner, as far as we're concerned, it's always been Tom Wagner who's been the face, front and center of it, isn't it? But to the American people, Tom Brady is a huge name, isn't he? You see the fanfare when he comes to a game over here as well. He's a massive name, not for not for Birmingham City fans necessarily, but for the wider audience. He is going to attract more people to watch and be interested in Birmingham City. So it would make sense to hang it on him. And to be fair, also, I believe Matt Alvarez, who's on the board of directors, a filmmaker, been involved in things like Ride Along with Ice Cube and Kevin Hart, and Straight Outta Compton as well. He's been quite influential in it. I think he's going to be. They've put him down as the is it the assistant director for this, with Stephen Knight directing it and producing it.
Yeah, I can't remember the title, but yeah, his name is definitely associated. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, he's played a key role as well. So it's something that's going to bring more money in, isn't it?
It is indeed. Should we move on to a couple more reasons to be positive as well? Just put the season in context. The raw numbers are Blues have played 54 games, and they've only lost 6 of them.
39 wins.
Yeah, 39 wins from 54 games. We have to spell that out. It's only fair to spell that out. Yes, they lost a big one yesterday, but routinely they do win. And obviously there's the trophy to pick up, isn't there?
There is the trophy to pick up, and the final 2 home games are naturally going to be sellouts. The away games, the allocations are probably going to be sellouts. There is going to be that day. I've no idea what the club have planned for. Whether they'll mark the League One title with, I don't know, would it be a bus parade or something, or a civic reception as it would have been in years gone by? I'm not sure yet. I don't think there's anything set in stone for that yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's going to be a day for celebration, isn't there? After 10 to 14 years, really, of pain, no club deserves it more in this country, really.
No, indeed. Reading, maybe. They're having a tough time.
Yeah.
But
they do have that AFL points record, though, Brian, that Blues are going to try and break.
So. Yeah, indeed. Let's certainly not begrudge this fan base their moan in the sun. Did Chris Davis say anything about when the trophy might be presented? There's obviously
there's only 2 dates, really, isn't there?
Yeah, there's this Friday. This Friday, isn't there? Or is it the Mansfield? Is the last home game? Is that right?
It is normally the last home game, isn't it? It is normally, in years gone by, it has been the last home game, unless obviously it goes down to the final day, and then it would have had to have been at Cambridge, wouldn't it? But it's normally the final home game, isn't it? I'd expect it to be that one, but yeah, I have to wait and see. They've put nothing out yet to confirm which one it will be.
No, indeed. It's likely that both home games will be sold out, as you said, anyway. Yeah. So, yeah, I think that about wraps it up. Hopefully, we've given you some reasons for optimism after yesterday's disappointment. Alex, thank you very much for coming on and joining us, spending more time with me, as if we didn't spend enough time yesterday together. I'll enjoy your day, and it's a big keep right on, and probably keep the faith from us as well today.